What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update for Cyber Dragons. That's right, with this deck we are going to be OTK focused. The idea is to one-shot your opponent as consistently as possible, and if you don't OTK them, you want to make sure that they are not coming back the next turn to haunt you. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all that out of the way, we're just going to dive headfirst into the profile, show you exactly what we've got, and explain why we've got it. So we're going to start off with Triple Cyber Dragon. Now I know this is technically the Cyber Dark Dragon version, but I just love the artwork the most. You're going to want to max out on this guy. The fact that it's not a once per turn is really nice, and that is relevant when you start considering more additional board breakers, stuff like Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, and then also stuff like Dark Hole as well, if you wanted to play them, because what's really nice is where you've got Albaz's effect where it normal summons itself and then triggers an effect to contact fuse, or to fuse technically, Cyber Dragon is just insane. So if they ever, and this is a note for anyone facing Cyber Dragon, never ever, where at all possible, let Clockwork Night resolve, because if this resolves and they have a Cyber Dragon in the hand, you know you're going to be losing your entire board. It's probably like one of the best board breakers in my opinion, and definitely the best board breaker for a machine type deck like this. Heck, I've seen builds that just play like Earth machines, and they put in Cyber Dragons with the Clockwork Night, because then they just summon down a Cyber Dragon going second with Clockwork Night active, and then just go, cool, contact fuse, and it's not an activated effect, so it's literally, as soon as this resolves, they just special summon down Cyber Dragon, and then contact fuse the entire board away, which is mental. Then your main starter of the day is Triple Cyber Dragon Core. This one pretty much gets everything you need to. It's specifically on normal summon, which is a little bit annoying. You get to add a Cyber Spell or Trap from the deck to the hand. However, if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you get to banish this from the graveyard and special summon a Cyber Dragon monster from the deck. So again, this is actually really useful, because there are times when you're like, right, okay, I could normal summon down the core, my opponent can use an effect to try and negate the core, and then, again, as one of the best negators for this deck, you're going to be utilising Forbidden Droplet, because you can activate Forbidden Droplet, send the Cyber Dragon core to the graveyard, negate that monster effect, still resolve to get the affected search off of the back of your core, but then also, while you control no monsters, you can banish this from the graveyard and get a Cyber Dragon, so it becomes a 2-for-1, which is really nice. And then of course we've got Triple Cyber Dragon Hers. You can place it 2 if you want to, but again, the benefit that this card's going to get is absolutely insane. As long as it is sent to the graveyard, you get to add another Cyber Dragon from the deck or graveyard to the hand. So when you're utilising again Forbidden Droplet, what you're trying to do is you're trying to gain as much advantage as possible when you're utilising effects like that. Not to mention that a normal one of Hers, if you don't open up core, can then be linked into an a Relinquish Anima, and that is going to be our best go second link one option that can cause your opponent a couple of different issues, and on top of that you're then going to be able to search out a Cyber Dragon. Now it's a shame, and I would absolutely love Cyber Dragon to get like a 1 card that just allows them to go, okay cool, link off something like a Hers, search out, the link can just be a vanilla, but search out a Cyber Dragon, and then it just has the effect that it lets you summon down a Cyber Dragon monster. Like, that'd be really kind of cool. The one naturally, you don't absolutely have to play this. The biggest downside of this is that if you do choose to use this effect, it does lock you into machines for the rest of the turn. Now, it's not the end of the world, because a lot of your plays are going to be revolving around just machines, but it is something to kind of keep your mind on. Then, of course, I'm going with 3 Yugioh. The idea is to break your opponent's board. Now, the reason you're going to be rocking 3 of this is for the pure fact that as soon as you give it to your opponent, again, the exact same applies. Summon down a Cyber Dragon, contact fuse it off. So you're always going to be in a good position. And when you're dropping a Kaiju on your opponent, especially in this current format, there are a couple of cards that are going to be not like towers per se, or just annoyances in general. But if you feel that your opponent is putting up multiple on the board and you'd rather have something that's a little bit more effective than a Kaiju just to deal with one of them, you could look at building the deck in a way where you don't rely on your normal summon. It can get a little bit tricky, because then you'd be putting in lava golems, and it means you would technically lose core, so you wouldn't be playing core at all. but it is kind of an option you could look into, or you'd play more board breakers. It really is up to you and your personal playstyle, but the fact that you can main deck a kaiju like this, yes, it is pretty beefy, so you do need to make sure you get rid of it, but just being able to go, cool, kaiju, one of your biggest, most annoying monsters to me, and then summon down a Cyber Dragon of any kind, and then try to link off into, or contact fuse into your Fortress Dragon. We've then got 2 Galaxy Soldiers, so obviously the idea behind this is probably a little bit more effective defensively, but it does allow you to get your herds out of your hand. The issue is when you're getting the herds out of the hand, yes, you get a Cyber Dragon, which is absolutely fine because then it becomes the discard fodder for your next Galaxy Soldier. But ultimately what this is allowing you to do is this is going to allow you to technically slowly rank up into a Cyber Dragon Infinity, which is great for going first. So when you're looking at this deck as a purely go second OTK option, it's only really there to extend the board past what you feel you might need, because you'd be getting rid of a Hers, you'd be getting rid of a Cyber Dragon, and then you'd move into an Infinity to try and absorb a monster, which can obviously come off very nicely with the back of the Jizakuru. But if you did want to consider taking these out for more board breakers, something that's a little bit more consistent in the forms of like a Lightning Storm, or you could add in a Dark Hole, which is again also quite relevant because we're main decking a Triple Tactics Thrust, that it does give you more ways of being able to break the board. And something like a Dark Hole can be just as effective for you, or an Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, as I mentioned previously. We've then got 2 Dino Wrestler Prankatops. Now the reason I've actually main this is, again, like I said, I'm going second, but what I like about Prankatops, yes, I don't really want to summon down Prankatops and then go to the battle phase, because you still want to be able to have your monsters on the board, or you want to be able to be pushing for OTK. But the reason I like the Prankatops is as soon as you summon it down, it technically makes your opponent panic a little, because they're like, they've got a 2600 beta for pretty much nothing, and it can then deal with any back row. So if you know your opponent has set a card that could cause you some sort of issue when you're trying to build up your plays, or if your opponent has something like a Baron that you know can negate your Clockwork Night, and like I said, the idea of resolving the Clockwork Night is so important for this deck. It really does cause your opponent huge amounts of issues and lead you to board breakers as well as OTK potential. Then you could very easily summon down Prankatops, tribute off, get rid of any floodgate around the back row that could be causing you an issue, while also trying to deal with one of the monsters on the front row as well. Again, it's completely subjective and up to you. You can take it out if you want to. Again, this would just then come down to more consistent board breakers for your local environment. I did want to consider Super Poly, so if I was going to put Super Poly into the deck, the card that I'd probably look at cutting the most would be the Galaxy Soldier, because it does take up a discard from your hand, and you're kind of changing like for like, in the sense you want to make sure you maintain as much hand resource as possible. You don't want to be in a position of, I really need to summon this, but I also really want to activate Super Poly, because on their own, neither of them are going to guarantee you the OTK. You're going to need some sort of build-up, and Super Poly can be very good for during the battle phase as well. One last card is the one Gizmo Orochi. I actually really like this. So the idea is, or what I like about Orochi is it does give you a monster to put on your opponent's board during your turn. But what that will allow you to, during their turn, and it will clash with Cyber Dragon's summon ability. But what it does give you is it gives you that ability to summon out an Orochi, and then it puts your opponent in a weird position, because it's okay, I can use my Orochi effect to banish from the graveyard to attempt to bait out a card on the field or pop a card. Or if I do decide to link it off, get rid of it, use Duality on it to put it to the graveyard, and then use its effect to come back during my turn, you're basically setting up more resource on the board. And like I said, Duality allows you to go into your Twin Dragon, and this is ultimately going to help you push for an OTK. Now, yes, it does need more board clearance, it does need more board space if you want to, but if you've already opened up a Kaiju and you go, right, okay, Orochi, summon down Orochi, and then go from there, you can be in a good position. It is a little bit risky because of Triple Tactics Thrust running around, that if you activate this not in like the end phase, so I would ideally save it for the end phase, you could then very well be putting a monster on your board and then putting them within Thrust Target, and then Thrust Target can get them anything they want. So you do need to think about when you're going to play it. But again, quite like the Prankatops, maybe even Galaxy Soldier and itself, they are subjective. You can take them out and change it around. I just like the idea of going Orochi, battle with Orochi, activate Duality, turn this into Twin Dragon, and then attack 2 more times. Like I said, it does clash with your Cyber Dragon because it does put that monster on the board, so that is something you will need to consider and test and see if it works for you. Moving on to the spells, so for the Cyber spells, of course, we've got Triple Emergency, so you add a Light Machine monster that cannot be normal summoned or set, or a Cyber Dragon monster from the deck to your hand, so you're basically just maxing out on as much access as you possibly can for your Cyber Dragon monsters. Rev System, Searchable Monster Reborn, very nice. Repair Plant, pretty straightforward and simple on that one. And then for the other normal spells, I do play the One Trill Tactics Thrust because it can count as a second copy of any of these if I don't get to them, but obviously I have more natural ways of searching either of these. And then of course it does also count as a Trill Tactic talent, and it can count as an Overload Fusion, which can be a very, very nice last minute option. And what I mean by that is if you've kind of burnt through all resource, but you still have an Overload Fusion, it does then unlock you some capabilities to make some plays. It's not an absolute match winner on its own, but that's when you could combo something like an Overload Fusion with Preview, something like a Limiter Removal. With Limiter Removal, quite like I said at the start of the video, when you're activating a card like this, you need to make sure that you're going for the OTK. Now obviously there are ways to naturally OTK without Limiter Removal, which is why this doesn't appear in most decks. However, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to provide you with as much consistency to OTK. Like, you don't want to get to a near OTK past your opponent and go, oh, I nearly beat you there. You kind of want to go, okay, build my normal board anyway, and then Limiter Removal just to confirm the game. On top of that, something that I also find really, really nice is because Limiter Removal can be activated in the damage step, very important, and so can Forbidden Droplet. What I quite like the idea of is you go Limiter Removal, any response from my opponent, no, okay, cool, Droplet to send the Limiter Removal while also halving my opponent's attack. So not only am I doubling my own attack, but I'm then halving my opponent's attack as well, which is just like an extra gut punch to kind of finish it off. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason we play Limiter Removal. The whole idea is that you have great power in order to... comes great responsibility. Joking. With Limiter Removal, you've got that ability to double up your attack, constantly try and push with OTK with as minimal, like as fewer machine interactions as possible, or you're putting your opponent on such little life points with such little board resource that the monster you've activated this on, you're not going to let get destroyed. You're going to link them off and then build your board off of the back of that as well with stuff like IP into SP, Infinity, so on and so forth. The best board breaker for this deck as a negate trap, obviously you can't use, or you can use your Dark Ruler No More, but the idea is you don't want to be using Dark Ruler No More because you're not going to be able to do damage that turn. Whereas Forbidden Droplet is the best option of that. It is the middle ground. It allows you to send stuff like hers, get a bit of an advantage off of it, send stuff like your core, banish it from the graveyard, get yourself a Cyber Dragon. So there are ways where you can gain resource off of the back of the card you're sending with this, which can be very, very important. Not to mention, if you do put your opponent in a position where they're like, okay, they're going to Cyber Dragon Contact Fuse me or something and they want to try and interact, you can go Droplet, send the Cyber Dragon, and then, like I said, Cyber Dragon isn't a once per turn, it just means you need to have no monsters, so you can just summon it again and off you go. To Trill Duality. Now I know this is a little bit expensive at this exact moment in time, but what makes this so good is it lets you tribute a light or dark monster to special summon either the opposite attribute from the extra deck or hand with the same original type but a different original attribute. You also have the ability to banish it from the graveyard to then start recycling your lights and darks, which can be very important when you're only playing one copies of Mega Fleet, one copies of Twin, so on and so forth. Now you can make the targets for this a lot more consistent, but what's really, really nice is mainly your fusion monsters from the extra deck are all darks, so you do get that ability to kind of tag out into other options should you want to. Obviously Fortress isn't the best example because if you tag out into that it's not going nowhere, but there you go, there's Twin and your Rampage. So you're just being able, more consistent ways to try and build up a board and push through it and then push for an OTK. Like I said, I did also consider Super Poly in this deck at some point, which could take this space as well if you wanted to. But I quite like this because it didn't require that discard and it just allowed you to give you that extra punch should you need to. And then, like, the best card that this deck has seen for a long, long time that isn't a Cyber Dragon card is Clockwork Night. Now, again, I know this is an expensive card because it only got printed once at this exact moment in time, but it is incredibly powerful for the deck. All face-up monsters on the field become machine monsters. Machine monsters you control gain 500 and machine monsters your opponent controls lose 500. So straight away it gives you a attack switch, and it doesn't even matter what card you're playing because it turns all monsters on your field into machines anyway. So even if you've got Prankatops, you're going to be able to buff that to 31, which is really, really nice. You can banish this card from the graveyard to then discard one card and then add an Earth machine monster from the deck to the hand. Boo! Should have been any machine, but it still does its job. So like I said, once this resolves, you really do put your opponent in such a bad position because all you need to do is normal summon a Cyber Dragon Core, normal summon a Cyber Dragon Hers, special summon down a Cyber Dragon, and you'll have ways to contact fuse the board off or just cause them so many issues. One Call by the Grave. You can play Instant Fusion in this version if you wanted to, which also can lead you to Millenniumize, but ultimately I didn't think I needed it. And then triple infinite impermanence. Now, you'll see that this is the only hand trap that we are technically playing, unless you want to count Gizmek as one. But the idea is that you want to be playing cards that are massively impactful. So when I try and build my OTK decks, the idea is that I don't really mind what type of board my opponent is building. I want to focus on being able to break it with as minimal, like with as few cards as possible. I don't want to drop an Ash Blossom and then they still have the ability to continue because I don't guarantee what they have in their hand. So you want cards that are going to be just as impactful going first, going second, and do everything you need to. The best thing about Imperm is during the draw phase, during my turn, I can activate it to then do a 1-for-1 trade with something like a Baron, or if their card can only be activated in the main phase, you're able to shut it down very early. Now obviously, with a lot of OTK decks, because they naturally already have like a 25 card core, give or take, for the main deck itself, it does become a little bit more trickier to set up the ability in order to kind of play through multiple lines of interaction. And what I mean by that is, yes, with an OTK deck, you can kind of deal with the front row nicely with Cyber Dragons. But then when you're looking at a back row, that can be a little bit tricky. And then you look at the hand, that's also quite tricky to deal with. So that's why you need to kind of adapt your deck according to the place you're going to. Like if the place you're going to plays loads of back row, then I would advise main decking stuff like Lightning Storms, Harpies, Feather Duster, heck, maybe even Cosmic Cyclones. Other than that, they're probably going to be in your side deck, and that's when you're going to utilize them to its max potential. Okay, so moving on to the extra deck. Now, the extra deck, unfortunately, is not for the faint-hearted. We do have some expensive cards in here, but I'll explain to you what you may be able to substitute them for as we go through it. So we've got the one Cyber End Dragon, just an insanely powerful boss monster. Yes, you can get 3 Cyber Dragons on the board as well, very easily, but you kind of want to be utilising this as a last option, as a 4k boss monster, and then give it with limited removal, making it 8k can be devastating. Mega Fleet, just be able to contact fuse off that pesky extra monster zone, so mainly stuff like Appaloosa, and the idea is you can also contact fuse off an SP Little Knight, very funny. Cyber Twin Dragon, already pretty much mentioned this, you just tag out an 8 into this, and that's where you can get really kind of cool off of the back of your Fortress, because obviously Fortress is a dark, whereas Twin is a light, so just being able to go, okay cool, contact fuse my opponent's entire board with Cyber Dragon and Clockwork Night, attack with Fortress Dragon, which is going to be a fat stack, and then Duality off your Fortress Dragon into a Twin to get 2 more attacks off, so very, very nice. Rampage, just very simply, Cyber Dragon into this off of the back of a Duality. Can be very, very powerful. Send in some Cyber Dragons from deck to the grave if you need it, and then also being able to destroy. Now, it can be very, very kind of cool and very powerful in order to do that. It can also be done with the above materials, which is basically just multiple Cyber Dragon monsters. So this is also an option that you can utilise if you want to more. For the Link monsters, of course, we've got IP into SP. If you don't have SP, the next best alternative I can possibly think of would be something like Nightmare Unicorn. It's not as resilient, it's not as good, but it does give you that option. The idea is that, like I said, if you can't OTK your opponent or can't finish the game off, you make sure you take away as many resources as possible and then set up your defensive line of IP, ultimately trying to push into SP, followed up with Cyber Dragon Nova and Infinity. For the other Link monsters, of course, we've got the one Sega, followed up by the one Relinquish Anima and the one Almirage. So obviously the idea is you go core into this, setting up your core grave effect and obviously getting it off the board. And then you can also go into a Hertz into Anima, which will allow you to steal one of your opponent's monsters if they have put it in a lapped core position. For the XYZs, of course, we've got the one Nova and the Infinity. Now, the reason I've got one on one of these and not more is because, again, this is more of a defensive card, in my opinion. So you're probably going to want to be using this more going first than you are going second. And it is, again, one of them ones where it's like, I can't guarantee the OTK, so now I'm going to set up IP into SP with Infinity. It's going to give me the most defensive crackback while I've already burnt away a decent chunk of my opponent's resources. And then the last 2 cards, again, because we're going second, another option of if you cannot finish off the board from that point, or if you just want to upgrade one of your monsters into a Typhoon because it gives you that little bit more extra attack to finish the game off, then you'd go for Typhoon. And then if there's one of them ones where, okay, I've gone into Typhoon the previous turn, or I've gone into Nova and I don't really want to go into Infinity or anything else, I can go into Zeus, and that just gives me the ability to completely board wipe should I need to. Again, these are probably more situational, so if you do have flex spots, take them out. Zeus should be relatively cheap and easy to pick up now thanks to the 2-player structure deck, whereas Typhoon I know is currently sitting at like £25 for an ultra rare, so you do want to kind of try and consider what else you could put in here. And like I said, because it's not a mandatory must-have card, you can sub it out for something else that's going to be more effective for you going forward. Maybe a second Mega Fleet if that comes up at your local environment more often. I have seen that people play Dragoon in the extra deck for Duality, but then that would require you to play a small Dogmatica package, which can also and very easily be done. That just really comes down to your play style. I feel that if you're going to play the Dogmatica package, you're probably going to balance the deck to go first more, and then you're also going to be putting in the Cyber Dragon Trap card, Overload, not Overload, sorry, in order to kind of pop more cards and be more destructive to your opponent. So that's pretty much it for the entire main deck. Like I said, the whole goal of this deck is to OTK consistently, which is why we are also playing stuff like limiter removal and so forth. I do think Cyber Dragon is an insanely powerful card, same power card, but also an insanely powerful deck. I would like to see Cyber Dragon get some more support in the future. I mean, the game's been around for, what, we're celebrating its 25th anniversary as it currently stands, so it's been around for absolutely ages, and we've seen 2 waves of Cyber Dragon support, like the original time it was sent out, and then I suppose you could also count Cyber Dragon Dark support, and then the structure deck, which again kind of brought Cyber Dragon Dark support, but still relatively good on the back of that one as well. And I can't wait to see what else this deck can do, like going forward, what more it can get. The fact that it's just generic machine as well does leave it open to just get future support in that form rather than it being directly for Cyber Dragons. But also, while it being an anime based deck as well, I do not see this being the end of Cyber Dragon for a long time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.